And even though you feel your heart pumping, it's about to pump out your chest, you just gotta go. And some situations are scary, and you're like, I might get killed. This dude is bigger. He has a bigger knife than me. But that's just the way things are, man. And I was, but only by the grace of God, man, was I delivered from my life sentence. My wife stayed with me the whole time, and it was something that was hard to go through.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Ron Salazar, welcome to the studio. Can you share just real quick, maybe an introduction, who you are, a little bit of maybe what you do?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. You and your wife, it's an honor to be here. First of all, my name is Ron Salazar. At the moment, I'm a registered technician. I work in a treatment facility dealing with men who are struggling with addictions of various sorts. You name it, from alcohol to marijuana. Those are the less, I could say, potent, less compared to the drugs and the substances that are here nowadays. You start off with marijuana, alcohol, and then it gets worse to heroin, meth, and nowadays fentanyl. We've seen just the outbreak on fentanyl use. Youngsters nowadays don't go from weed and alcohol to, like back in the days, weed, alcohol to other substances. They go straight to fentanyl. That's been something that's been killing a lot of people. But yeah, just the blessing and opportunity that I've gotten to work in a place like this, having myself gone through the struggle of being an addict myself while in prison under a life sentence. So I became an addict too for 2 years while I was in prison. And that was a struggle for me. I hit rock bottom. So if there's anybody that could relate to these men where I work at, it's those that have actually gone through an addiction themselves and overcame only by the power of the Holy Spirit, thanks be to God. But yeah, it's a blessing. And yeah, I'm at home now with my wife, my 2 sons and my daughter now, 7 months. And I could say it's quite, there's no words to really express my joy, on how it is now to be out here. I feel like a newborn, going through just the different phases of, life. For me, it's all brand new. Mm-hmm. Again, I haven't been in a jail cell for so long. And then now, little by little making steps towards, prospering and success and everything else that God might have in store, that's coming our way. Because I've seen God move, and God still is moving and working. But it's a blessing. It's incredible, man.
Wow, it sounds incredible. It sounds almost like unbelievable. So, sentence to a life in prison. I can't even imagine how did that happen? When you hear sentence to a life in prison, it's like, okay, something really bad must have happened, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
How did you end up there? And you're here, right? So you're not there. And maybe, if there's anything, where you feel like, I don't know, triggers you and you don't want to go there, you don't have to go there. So feel free, to say, hey, that's in the past, God restore me or whatever. But yeah, that's life, sentenced to a life in prison. How does one person get there?
Nowadays a DUI, if you get in your car nowadays while intoxicated, while under the control of alcohol, and you happen to get in your motor vehicle and drive off and you kill somebody, that right there can get you a life sentence. So it's very easy, to get yourself in prison. In the snap of a finger, you let your anger drive you to the point where you don't know how to control your emotions. Your anger could lead you to possibly hurt somebody. including those in your own family, in your own home, or someone out here in these streets. Someone cuts you off in traffic. You've seen the incidents over and over when it comes to road rage, a parking spot. People have been killed, shot. They get into a brawl over a parking spot. You name it, right? The stories are endless, and they continue to happen. The anger of man is dangerous when not taking control of your emotions. Is something that we have to work on taking control of, because you could fly off the handle like this, and that could be the cause of you possibly killing somebody or hurting somebody, or someone hurting you or killing you. And so getting a life sentence is easy, but it's getting out of prison. Once you're there for a life sentence, that is hard. That is not such an easy thing to do.
Yes.
And in my case, it was nothing but a miracle. It was nothing but a miracle. God's work all day. I could have never gotten myself out of prison, but I did end up in prison for a life sentence. And it was because while I was young, I got caught up in the streets, the gang life. And it wasn't like that at first, My mom and dad migrated from El Salvador over here to the United States when they call it the Civil War in El Salvador. La guerrilla was going on over there in the 80s.
Yeah.
In order to give themselves a better life and to evacuate and leave what was going on in El Salvador before. My dad even told me a while ago, because I asked him, if you would have stayed in El Salvador, what would have happened? And my dad told me, mijo, if I would have stayed in El Salvador during that time, I would have got killed. I would have got recruited. And possibly would have ended up dead. So I had to leave. I didn't want no part of that. So he migrated here, not only to get away from that, but get himself a better chance, an opportunity to live a life that has much more to offer, being on this side of the border, And so he met my mom here. I was born and raised in a Christian household.
Really? Wow.
Yes, so that's a surprise.
Yeah.
To a lot, when I tell them, like, what? They see all the tattoos, and they're like, you must have been raised like somewhere in the projects or somewhere where you were, used to seeing, and you grew up seeing drugs and drugs being sold in a gang neighborhood. I actually wasn't. I was raised in a Christian home. My mom and dad got together. They got married. I came into the picture. Then my sister, which is 3 years younger, and they raised us in a Christian home from ever since I could remember. We used to go to church every Sunday. We used to go to retreats with other churches. This used to take place. The retreats used to take place in IE, in the Inland Empire. This lake called Lake Paris. We used to go there. I still remember it clear because most of my time was spent with these kids at school, with this kids, at church, I never really hung out in the streets, never really had friends on the outside of the church. Most of my friends were in church. And then my uncle, my aunt, they were real big in raising me also big Christians to this day, faithful to the Lord for ever since I could remember. Their children, their daughter ended up pregnant at an early age, and whatever happened between them, she hasn't talked to him for years. And she went off and took off. And then their son also ended up homosexual, and I know that's grieved their hearts, but they still love the Lord, and they're still serving the Lord, and they're still together ever since I was like yay high. And they have been an example. They have been an example of what it looks like to go through trials and to end up, I'm not going to say maybe losing your son and daughter, but they don't really talk to their son and daughter, and their son and daughter ended up, out there in the world, even though they raised them in the church and they basically knew of the Lord, but then they went off on their own. And they haven't heard from him since. But my aunt always tells me my door is always open. Even my daughter still has the key to my door, but she doesn't return home, and it just reminds me of, the parable of the prodigal son, that Christ told that, whenever you're ready to come home, I'm still here. And that example I've had with me for a long time. And it's been something that I've not told them this, but, it's been something that I always remember, how your faithfulness to the Lord that I've carried with me. But I looked up to my mom and dad. They were not perfect parents, but they did their best. And eventually they ended up divorced, separated, and it resulted in them being divorced. My mom took off with my sister, and then I took off with my dad. Instead of instead of involving the system, instead of involving the court, they felt that we were old enough to decide, which we weren't, but that's the way that they thought at that time.
How old you were?
Oh, we were, if I can remember correctly, maybe 12,
Well,
13, around there, 14 possibly. And they felt that we were big enough, old enough at least to know what was going on. And instead of allowing the court to choose who we wanted to go spend time with, or who we wanted to go live with, that we decide. My sister right away picked my mom because my mom had already basically talked to her and gotten in her head and told her, like, we're women, we're girls. You ain't gonna have that much freedom like that with your dad, And then she told me, only your dad could teach you how to be a man. You should go off with your dad. So my sister right away picked my mom, like, bam. And I was the one that I still remember trying to fight, so they could stay together. I wasn't accepting that. Like, no, what do you mean? Like, no. What do you mean? Like, nah. Like, you guys work this out. Like, what do you mean why are you choosing my mom? Like, just to go, like, you just giving up, like, you just going with my mom.
but just
like,
you two, your sister and you?
Yeah. I do have another brother, but he's from a different dad, same mom.
Okay.
But I was quite hurt, disappointed that my sister right away picked my mom, like, and then she wasn't trying to fight for the marriage, trying to get them to at least work it out. Let them work it out. Stick together. Don't do this like this. Don't give up on their marriage so fast. And my dad was like, it's not gonna work. I mean, when you're older, you understand, but right now it's like it's not gonna work out. We tried it. It's just the way it is, And so after a while, I just gave up. I was like, okay. I picked my dad. I stayed with my mom for a little bit. Long story short, my aunt, my dad's sister, she rented us a room, so I was able to move in with my dad. And I was my aunt, mi tia Dina, my uncle at the time. They were still together. They were soon afterwards. They also ended up separated, divorced. But at that moment, they were still together. So it was my tío, my uncle Victor also. His name was Victor. And then my two cousins, my girl cousin Elsie, and then my boy cousin Urban. And they were so much younger than I was. I was probably like already 13, 14. They were like, 8, 9, 10. And so we stayed there. So from that point on, we stopped going to church. No more church, no more Bible study, no more retreats, no more friends at church, no more my aunt and my uncle didn't see them like that anymore like that. So guess what?
No more God.
No more God. And when God was taken out of the picture in the Word of God, in retreats and hanging out with godly folks, Christian folks, people that were invested in the kingdom and going to church, guess what? There I went. I started going left. Started going wayward, drifting that way, away from the Lord. In a way, my dad worked graveyards for a lot of years. And so by the time that he was supposed to be home, he was supposed to be at work at 12 midnight. He'll come back home at 8:30 because he'll leave. His shift will be over at 8. By then, I was supposed to already been in school. little by little, we started ditching school. I started smoking weed. I got introduced to marijuana. Then I started drinking. I started getting to know other kids in the building that used to live next to me, in the building next to mine. I started to get to know some of the kids that stayed in the building where we were living at. And we just started off as skateboarders. We were just skating, up and down the block. I started to get to know the kids on the other block. We grew up. I was raised.
You was expanding your territory.
Exactly, and that's how you start, right?
Yeah.
Start get to know the whole. Next thing you know the whole vecindad, the whole neighborhood, And and next thing you know, we were on the block next door, and we grew up in West LA. That's where my aunt rented me and my dad the room in West LA, Mid-City area, right on Crenshaw and Pico. That's where we grew up, and that's where I was raised at. And that neighborhood was already gang territory. It was already gang. There was already legit big set gangs already in that neighborhood, in that part of Mid-City LA, which is the West Side, And so, but we were skateboarders. Our mind wasn't on that. We were just skating up and down the block. But that's how I started, and just like we started expanding our, territory and starting to get to know people and kids more. We started to expand our rebellion started increasing. We started getting worse. We started from ditching school, going to ditch parties, smoking, drinking. Next thing you know, we ended up making a tagging crew. And we're now taggers on skateboards. So everybody made a little tagger name for themselves.
Tagging like making like graffiti?
Yes.
Okay. So
we became big graffiti artists, on skateboards, So that became our thing, and we used to do graffiti. Some of that even beautiful graffiti that you can't even understand, and you have to step back and really look, and it's like, oh yeah, that's what it says. Or somebody has to show you, look, this is what it says. And you're like, oh, it says Carmen, but it's in calligraphy, kind of like in crazy letters,
Is graffiti kind of like is tattooing kind of like graffiti, but on your skin? Is that kind of like some of the tattoos you have? Does it come maybe from that graffiti time, or you think?
There was, a lot of my tattoos, I got it in prison, but a lot of those artists, a lot of, fellas who went or moved on to tattooing, started off, a lot of them did start by writing on walls and doing graffiti. And then they started getting good, so they started practicing on paper. Their letters, their handwriting, and their art. And they just started getting good at portraits and, just art and writing and handwriting and all kind of stuff, like calligraphy and all kind of letters. And so, a lot of my work, even though it was done in prison, it was done by these artists in there whose talent is like, whoa, mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But a lot of guys did start off with, by writing on walls and graffiti.
Yeah.
Ex-gang members and guys that just got good at what they do, and they mastered their craft,
So that's the neighborhood you were in at that point, just like surrounded by, you're starting kind of like your own crew of taggers.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like your community.
Yeah, that was my little community, my little crew, my little clique.
Yeah.
We call it.
And then what happened?
And then things started escalating, and it started getting worse. So now the local gangs that are already set in their part of LA where we lived at, they started pressing us. They started pushing up on us. Stop writing on our walls. This is our neighborhood. Don't do that.
Wow.
If there's anybody's writing that's going to be on his walls, it's going to be ours, not you guys. So stop writing. You guys escape up and down the block. But if you guys going to write something, you guys going to write the hood. Our hood. You guys going to get jumped in. I already see you guys getting jumped in. You guys are going to get jumped in. You guys are going to be from the hood. And we're like, nah. We're like, nah, man. Like, nah.
What does jumped mean?
Jumped in means...
jumped in.
Jumped in means you get initiated into...
Okay.
Boom.
Una paliza.
Boom. Una paliza. Una buena.
Una chinga.
Una chinga,
Okay.
Para que ellos, en las calles, pues uno quiere ver que tú eres hombre.
You're a man.
Que you're a man, que eres macho, that you could take a beating,
Yeah.
que de veras tienes cojones,
Yeah.
¿no? Y que vas a poder pelear aún que te están, que tienes a tres, y los tres se están golpeando, that you're gonna fight back, that you're a man, that you're a macho, that you got heart. So they want to test to see if you got heart.
Wow.
So that's when you get initiated, and if you accept, then you'll get 3, 4, and you come in until you fight back. And then some of the guys will try to ball up and do what they do, and they say, "Nah, fight back." And they'll hit you harder, or they'll trip you, and then they'll start kicking you and stomping on you, But they want to see that you have heart, that you'll fight back. And if you don't have any tough in you, or you might be like, because me, I remember even being bullied in middle school. I was like, you could say, the choir boy. I was I didn't know how to fight. I spent a lot of my time in going to church and in retreats and hanging around with kids from church. They were
yeah, you're in a complete different environment now. Wow.
I went from being a church kid, a choir boy, podemos decir un choir boy,
yeah,
a un all of a sudden un vagabundo, un callejero.
Wow.
A street guy now, trying to be tough, trying to be a thug, trying to be hard. And at that time, I wasn't trying to show that I was scared, but yet I still was. But when you go through little things like that, they kind of toughen you up and they harden you. And so that's why a lot of these youngsters, these kids, or these dudes who ended up in prison, they went through a lot of beatings, a lot of gunshots, a lot of stabbings. They got shot at. Some even shot. A lot of them were killed the first time they got shot at, and some of them only was shot once. One bullet killed them. There's been dudes who've been shot several times, they've been hit several times, and still lived through that.
Wow.
So, if it was their time, it was their time. But a lot of those things toughen you up and they harden you. And that's what they want. They want you to have a heart, to be crazy, to be down for the barrio, And so that's what that does. They te golpean, you fight back, you show that you got heart, and that's your entrance into that lifestyle. And so these gangs, they kept, pressing on us, pushing on us. The names of the gangs are not important, even the neighborhood that I used to be from, because, when I share my testimony or my story, it's not to glorify the past. It's not to glorify these things that are now of the kingdom of darkness. That something that the devil used to pull me into the dark and have me trapped, had me stuck. It had me living that lifestyle, which didn't get me nothing. It didn't make me rich. It didn't give me a house on the hills with a 10-car garage, like a lot of the rappers like to portray. This lifestyle, being a thug, being a hoodlum, being one of them boys, the money and the cars, and that lifestyle didn't give me none of that, but a life sentence.
Wow.
And I was from murder and 2 attempted murders, gun enhancement and gang enhancement from 2007. By the grace of God. And because God's grace and mercy is so huge and so big, bigger than my wrongs, bigger than my sins. There's a verse in the Bible that says, when sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. Your sins might, be big, but God's grace is like an ocean. It's bigger than that. And God proved that by delivering me from a life sentence. And only He could have done that. But yeah, just...
What was going on when take me to that moment when, I don't know, cops got after you. What was the process? Were you fighting maybe with some gangs member? Was something going on where guns were fired or something like that? And were the police involved when they came? And I'm assuming there was an arrest, right, for you. What was going through your mind when that was happening? Did you see it as like, oh, I'm in trouble? Or was part of you, like you said, the toughness? I'm like, oh, I'm going to show that I'm tough? Or were you afraid? What emotions were going on when that was going on?
Wow. Yeah, great question, by the way. As things got worse, there were several arrests along the way. I had a juvenile record. I went to juvenile hall several times. I even ran into some of my skateboarding buddies in juvenile hall. They were like, "Hey, what's up, man? Like, what's, and this and that." And it's just, that's a sad place to juvenile hall. It's like a jail for kids, a jail for kids. That's like your guy's daughter. They also have a place for girls. It's like your daughters or my sons being in a place where it's like they call it a room in juvenile hall. Go back to your room. You fight with other, because they fight in there too. Like this little kid, he could be 13, 14, 15, but he already has his whole face tattooed with his gang on there. More tattoos than me. And he's really down for his hood. He's really prideful and really about his neighborhood, And he runs across a new kid from the rival gang comes into that unit that they're in. Right away, what? And they'll start fighting. So even in juvenile hall, man, it's a sad place and it's stressful. Yeah, depressing. At the same time, it is fun because you're fighting. If you're into that lifestyle and you're already deep in it. After a while, you get so numb to that place actually becomes fun to you. You're like, yeah, the halls. I'm gonna be hard right here. I'm gonna handle business. I gotta do what I gotta do, and I can't show no weakness. And I'm gonna fight whoever. I don't care, even if I lose. And I'm gonna show everybody in this whole juvenile hall that I'm hard. And that's just something that your reputation that you gotta keep up. But yeah, it got worse. I ended up being arrested as a juvenile, Grand Theft Auto, different little arrests here and there. I did some camp programs, boot camp programs. The most they could give you is a year. In those camps back then, I don't know about now. My last camp program that I did, I graduated high school from a camp named Camp Scudder. I graduated. I got my legit high school diploma. And once I got released from there, I was already 18, on the verge of being 19, so I was already an adult. If I got arrested after that, I went to county jail now, where the big boys are grown men, and that was scary the first time. But then, my dad, he was just fed up because I dragged him back and forth to the system, to court. He used to come visit me in juvenile hall, and in juvenile hall, if you have, your parents have to be the ones to bring you personals, hygiene, like shampoo, soap, stuff like they're the ones who have to come visit you. They're the ones who have to come bring you stuff. If not, you use the county stuff that's provided for you, which is, it's county stuff, so it's not that good, And my dad was just fed up. And then once I turned 18, I was still living with him, and he saw still the continuous pattern of me still being arrested, not changing. Then as an adult, I got arrested. The police already knew me in the neighborhood. They already know all these guys are graffiti artists, they're taggers, but now they're taggers with guns. Now, my first case as an adult, I believe, was a possession of a firearm, of a gun. Now we had to get guns and protect ourselves, because now these gangs that were already in the neighborhood were coming on us, and they were coming with big guns. They were coming, every other day, and they catch us, they'll shoot us, and they're shooting to kill, and the cops knew that. And so now we felt pressure because they told us to stop writing, and we didn't listen. They warned us the last time, and after that, we took that warning as a joke, lightly, yeah, whatever. And we kept writing our little little graffiti art. And then, these gang members, these gangsters already, from a gang that's already big, already known in the prison system and out here, they got drugs, guns, everything. They're like, okay, these little youngsters don't want to listen? Okay, we're going to show them what's up. And then I remember the first time they shot at us, like, pop. Nobody got hit, but we were scared, like, oh, shoot. A lot of my friends at that time that were Tiger skateboarders, they got scared. We never saw them again. They're like, they gave us a do sign. Peace.
Wow.
Peace.
Yeah.
I was watching.
Chicken out. Yeah.
Chicken out. I'm gone. I was watching. Y no quisieron. No quisieron.
Continue.
To continue. No quisieron to stick around. They're like, nope, we're gone. You guys are taking it too far. Now you guys are not playing with you guys. These guys are serious. You guys are not gonna be able to hang with these guys, no van a poder durar con ellos. Ellos son una pandilla, ustedes son skateboarders, son niños. These dudes are serious. Man, we're like, whatever. The police knew, they heard, they saw writings for years before that, and they know who we were. A lot of us had already gotten arrested, but it hadn't got that serious until we started getting shot at. And then those that stuck around, we had something to prove. We wanted to stand our ground. And I was bullied in middle school. I learned how to fight by fighting other graffiti artists. I learned by fighting my friends, my homeboys. You learn how to fight. I mean, I might have not been the best at fighting, but I learned to defend myself, learn how to swing them. And then once we started getting shot at, then we started buying guns. And I remember the first time we bought like a little 38 pistol, and that little pistol only has 5 shots. And there was only one gun between 30 guys, and we thought we were big shots. We got a gun now, and one little pistola, one little pistolita amongst 30 guys, but yet these other gangs, they have like hundreds of guns, so we felt big with one little gun, and that's when the police started coming down on us, because it went from 1 gun to 5 to 10 to each of us having our own guns, shotguns. Now we felt like, we're not going to let these guys bully us. We're not going to let them intimidate us. We're not going to let them scare us off. We live here too. We skated here too. Our families pay rent. We've fallen and scraped our knees here in this block. We've skateboarded here. This is our neighborhood too. Forget that. We're not going to be scared. We're not going to let these guys run us off and intimidate us. And so we felt like that we had to stand our ground. We had something to prove. And so we started shooting back at them. Then we started getting arrested for attempted murders, gun possessions, graffiti, vandalism, drugs, possession of drugs, sales, stuff like that comes with the territory when you're living that lifestyle. Next thing you know, I'm in and out of county jail. My first, like you mentioned, my first case was possession of a firearm. And was I praying or reading the Bible at that time? No. I was still in and out. My relationship with females were few. I was more committed to the hood, to the streets than I was to a woman, to female. I had my little, you could say, my little hookups, my little just flings, but it wasn't never nothing serious. If it was a serious relationship, it would have been like three relationships. But I could never stay out because the police were already starting to get to know me, my friends and the trouble that we were in. And so that's, the arrest that basically came down to me being arrested as an adult already at 18 a couple times. And it was for vandalism, gun possession, for discharging a firearm, I believe at one point. And then I was already in prison serving time. And I was about to get out. And homicide detectives came and they started questioning me, saying that I was being investigated for 1 murder, 2 attempted murders. And in my mind, I'm like, what? But I kind of had an idea on what it was about. But, they said, oh, your name came up. They showed me a video of somebody else being interrogated, being questioned. My name came up. I was like, oh, wow. As being a shooter. And I was like, wow, I can't believe this. And they was like, do you know what he's talking about? And I'm like, I don't know what he's talking about. Well, he mentioned your name. You want to talk to us about that? I said, I got nothing to talk about. I don't know what he's talking about. They left it alone. I was still on the investigation, but I didn't hear nothing about that afterwards until that point, right when I was about to get out from prison for the little term that I was doing. And here they come in 2012. And they said, we have a warrant for your arrest. They went to go get me in Arizona, Eloy, Arizona. I was in prison out there when Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor. Mm-hmm. The prisons in California were overpopulated. It was crowded. So he signed the contract. It was a bill in order to lessen the overcrowdedness in California prisons to start sending inmates to other states. So the population reduced, and they started sending people to Oklahoma, Tennessee, Arizona. I ended up in Arizona, and I didn't make it to any other state further because I only had maybe 4 years with half to do. 4 years with 50%. That was 2 years, so I was going to be, out quick and back to California. So they sent me to Arizona, and so I was like maybe 3-4 months away from getting out, possibly 2. Here come homicide detective. They said, "You're coming back to the county with us for a murder and 2 attempts." The emotions that I felt, just like I couldn't believe it. I was like, "Are you serious? Like what? Like what do you mean?" It's like you have two co-defendants in this case. You're going to be the third one. They were already in trial, but now because you're coming into the case, they're going to have to start over and wait on you to get ready. So they were there in the county from 2008 all the way to 2015. I came in 2012, and I was only there for 3 years to 2015. So they were there like 8-9 years, and then when I came in, they had to start over and wait on me to prepare and get ready, my defense, right? And they say, "Yeah, they got you as the shooter." Come to find out afterwards, they took deals. One of them took 21, the other one took 25, and I was the last one left to go to trial. And I ended up going to trial by myself as being the alleged shooter, and I ended up being convicted. The court found me guilty. The jurors all said guilty. But just even at that moment was, even though I didn't show it, or it didn't seem like that when even I want to go get picked up by the detectives, and they told me, and I was being booked in. They flew me on one of those little avioncitos.
Yeah.
From Arizona to the Van Nuys, little airport. They have like a little airport right there. Yeah, that's where they booked me in. And when I was being booked in for murder and 2 attempted murders, the worst case that you could ever get, basically charged for. And even my attorney said that to the jurors when we were in trial. This man is here being charged with a murder to attempt. The worst charge is that it could be brought up on anybody. There's nothing worse than a murder and 2 attempted murders. And I cried when I was in that. I had to call my wife and tell her the news. I wasn't married. I met my wife, years back, and we were just, friends. We're dating, and then she became my wife. I got to bail out for a case that I caught in prison before 2012, and I got to get married with her. And I left her pregnant, and I had to turn myself in, so that was my second son. And I'll have a baby girl with her. But just to call her and tell her that I still remember, that was like one of the hardest things I ever had to do. Just having to call my wife and tell her that I wasn't coming home because I was being charged for murder and 2 attempted murders. And just to hear her cry and saying it was too good to be true. That broke my heart, man. I started crying. And I'm on my free phone call that they give you when you're in the station. And there was nobody in that big holding tank, just me. I just started crying my eyes out, man. I was like, comencé a llorar y a llorar. Diciéndole a mi esposo, me están cobrando con una muerte, 2 attempts de muerte. I just started crying. said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And she was like, I'm going to be with you. Don't worry about it. Just fight it. And I did. In 2015, I went to trial and I lost. I got convicted. And the exact number that they gave me was 138 years to life. For the 1 murder, 2 attempted murders, gun enhancement, which also carries a lot of time, and the gang enhancement. So that brought up the total to 138.
138 years sentence in prison.
Sentence in prison. And at that moment, once they read the verdict, and I heard the clerk reading the paper, that all the jury, all the members of the jury decided unanimously on the decision, guilty, guilty, guilty. Oh my God, I felt it on the inside, but I didn't show it. And I just looked back at my wife, and I looked back at her, and her face just fell. And I could tell just by looking at her face, oh my gosh, she was in so much pain. I could tell just by looking at her face that she was in so much pain. And all I could say, I didn't have nothing to say. What could I say besides, it's going to be all right, That's all I could come up with. That's all I had at that moment.
Yeah.
That's all I had, Todo va a estar bien. Are you serious? How is everything going to be all right?
Everything is bad.
Everything is bad. There's no way that everything's going to be all right when I just got hit. I got slapped by the judge, across the face. With 130 years to life, and I'm over here telling my wife, look, it's going to be all right. How is everything going to be all right? Everything is not all right, but that's all I had at that moment to try to at least make her feel good. But did it work? I doubt it. But, I tried to say something comforting, but in my inside, I was like, oh, my God, I thought I had this beat. I thought I had it beat. And I didn't. And I went back into the custody side, and I just went back, and I was devastated. I was hurt. I was a little stressed out, depressed, but then it numbed me. Days went on, and I just took it. Whatever. And I was still drinking, smoking, but that was hard. Just seeing her and the pain in her face, and that was it. I felt it, but I couldn't show it. When you're living that kind of lifestyle, and you get locked up, you got to keep up your reputation, and even the gang life. You being a gangster doesn't stop in there. It still continues in there. But it's on a whole different level. Yeah, you no longer have guns, and it's no longer with your rivals, with your own race in there, but now it's now it involves war at times in there with other races. And there's politics, there's drug trade money involved. And whenever there's drug trade money involved in politics, there's sooner or later things are bound to clash, and things are about to hit the fan, and it's about to get ugly. There was moments in there where I was scared, and I couldn't show it, and I had to mask it and hide it deep down in. And I had to just put a mask on. It didn't show my fear. I couldn't show no weakness. Te tienes que aventar, and you just gotta go against your fear. And even though you feel your heart pumping, it's about to pump out your chest, you just gotta go. And some situations are scary, and you're like, I might get killed. This dude is bigger. He has a bigger knife than me. But that's just the way things are, man. And but only by the grace of God, man, was I delivered from my life sentence. My wife stayed with me the whole time. And it was something that was hard to go through.